morning and welcome to 1111 downtown. I'm Tom McDermott, the pastor of the 1111 community here in Fort Worth and a member of one of the staff at the First United Methodist Church in Fort Worth. We're so glad you're joining in. And again, as always, I hope you're doing well right now. We're 3 weeks into 2021. We're still dealing with 2020. And so it's uncertain times. And this is the series that we're in right now as we explore the meaning of Epiphany, the Uncertain Tour. So I'm glad you tuned in. We're going to have some fun today, some great music and some interesting ideas. So I'm glad you're going to be a part of that. Listen, while you're registering your attendance, if you have a chance, and if you are interested in it, there's an opportunity for giving online. We continue to do ministries abroad, as you know, and so we appreciate your support for this ministry as well as for all the other ministries we do in the church. While you're doing all that, I want to make a couple of announcements. Coming up on Saturday, this coming Saturday, is an all-day seminar with James Stabile, Patterson. Now, James is Susan Stabile's son, and many of you know Susan Stabile. She's one of the nationally known experts in the Enneagram. I've taken some seminars with her, and her son, James, has been a student of hers for many years, of course, but also has co-led with her. I participated in one of James's workshops a couple of years ago, found it fascinating. The Enneagram is a great opportunity to kind of explore the core motivations of why we act the way we do, things that we are often unaware of, but that we all experience these same kinds of core motivations. It's such insightful help to sort of get a better grasp of this. In fact, for Linda and I, it's been a great help in our relationship and our relationship at work, as well as in how we understand others' behaviors. And it's fun. So I hope you'll take advantage of it. It's this Saturday, the 23rd, and you'll find lots more information about it and the registration on the church website, fumcfw.org. Check it out, and I hope to see you on Saturday. The other thing is that coming up after this next Sunday, the 24th, beginning on the 25th, I begin my leave of absence, or my renewal leave. I'm going to take renewal leave for about 8 weeks. The church offers that every 7 years for clergy in full-time employment. And so I've been here 7 years and looking forward to having a chance to kind of explore my faith and just rest and get some long-needed sort of introspective time. It's also an opportunity for me to sort of look at the future. What will we be once we're back into some kind of normal relationship? I'm looking so much to where we can actually be connected together again, and to embrace and to shake hands and to just be present physically with one another. But that's not going to be normal. It's going to be a new kind of normal. What will that look like? What are the opportunities in that kind of new normal? So I want to take some time to think about that with you as well. You'll be in good hands. Linda McDermott, Reverend Linda, will be preaching in my absence a number of times. DeAndrea Dare will as well. And Sharm Robarts will come back and visit us once, and then Todd Kirk as well. And I'm going to try to come back in the middle maybe and do something at the beginning of our season of Lent. So you're going to be in good hands, and everything will be taken care of. The music, of course, will be wonderful as always with Brad, the band, and a lot of the guest artists that he'll be bringing in. So you're going to be fine, and I truly appreciate your support and encouragement as I go off and take this time. That's just something I don't want to take for granted that you all are. I'm really grateful that you all are supportive of that. A number of you have emailed me. So I look forward to when we come back. But next Sunday, we're going to have a lot of fun. So I hope you'll be with me and with Brad and the band next Sunday. We're going to have a lot of fun on that last Sunday before I take my leave. So we're going to begin now, and want to invite Kagan to come and give us our welcome candle.
Join me as we welcome another one. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, or lover of believing, it does not matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again.
Good morning. Our scripture reading this morning comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 43 through 50. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses and the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." Let us pray. O Holy One, these are uncertain times in what seems to be a very uncertain place. May we search deep within for where it is that we hear that still small voice say, "Follow me." And may we examine our heart and our mind. May we look around to find the goodness and to see where love not just is, but where love thrives. And may we follow that in all that we say and in all that we do with all those in whom our journey intersects. May you come and be with us this morning and lead us and be within us as we travel the journey, as uncertain as it may be, and as we find our way with one another. We pray these things in the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen.
Pop the cork, a champagne glass, race to the future, drink to the past. Thank the good Lord for the friends he cast in the play he wrote for you. And if you love a girl, man, light up a torch, blaze a trail to her front porch. Kiss her till your lips are scorched and the rain comes down on you. Bless your sweet mistakes that crumble you down to your days, that brought you to this place, changing you by to grace. Change is just what you needed. Live your life in a three-piece suit, a cocktail dress, a combat boots. Pick your path and you walk your truth, and the world will come around to you. It's a long, strange ride to get to your why. There's a place in your pocket where peace can abide. Pull it out, it's a compass, a guide. It'll put a little soul in you. Bless your sweet mistakes. Always and never the same. Use a little faith to light the flame, and I know you'll connect to you. Bless your sweet mistakes, crumble you down to your days, then rise. God's grace, changing you by grace. Change is just what you needed. Ooh. Pop the cork, a champagne glass, race to the future and drink to the past. Thank the good Lord for the friends he cast and the play he wrote for you.
So I have started this series that for this season of Epiphany that I'm calling Happy New Year, the Uncertain Tour. And I gave it that name for a couple of reasons, one of which I'll get to later, but for now, Epiphany is about how we discover the incarnate God in our midst. It's a remembrance and a celebration of the Christ child, the birth of the Christ child, when the Magi discover the Christ child. But it extends for about 5 weeks, and it's really a period of time for us to reflect on the way in which God is incarnate in the world. First in Christ, and now then how in us. How is God in our world now? And put it another way, it's this opportunity to reflect on who we are in relationship to the indwelling of the holy that is always present with us in all things and all people. And if we can come to see that, when that happens, what then are we being invited into? That's really what I think this story about Nathanael, about Jesus calling Nathanael, is about in the Gospel of John. And it's only in the Gospel of John, but it's a unique story because it's the only time that John's Gospel mentions a man of Israel. Here is a true man of Israel. But he says it after Nathanael makes that strange comment, which I love in this story. You picked up on it too. Nathanael says to Philip, when Philip says, come and see this guy from Nazareth that Moses and the prophets talked about, and Nathanael's first response is, can anything good come out of... Well, put in your own words. You know you've said it, or you've heard it said. Can anything good come out of that neighborhood? Can anything good come out of that city, that town? Can anything good come out of that group or cultural group or political party? It's strange because of the way Nathanael says it, but it speaks to something that I think is true for all of us, how we see the world around us. And this is what Jesus invites us to transform. It reminded me of Hoja Nasruddin in one of his stories. You remember Hoja Nasruddin. He's a foolish trickster, the wise fool from the Middle East in the 14th century, and his stories come out of a mixture of tradition, of Islamic and Christian tradition, a mystical tradition, but the stories carry a kind of wisdom that takes you by surprise, kind of an epiphanal kind of insight, and it sort of shocks you into a different way of seeing things. The time that Hoja is outside in his garden and he's looking for a lost key, and his neighbors are helping him. It's the middle of the day. They're all digging in the flower bed. And they say, Hoja, we've dug all day. It doesn't seem to be here. Where did you last see it? He said, well, I last saw it inside. Well, then why aren't we inside looking for it? And Hoja says, because there's more light out here. Then there's the story of the time that the thieves broke into his house in his second floor bedroom. They were stealing everything he had as he lay there awake in his bed watching him. They stuffed everything into bags, and then they jumped out the window with the bags and rode off on their horses. Hoja chased him. He got out, got dressed, got on his horse, and chased them all night long. As the sun was coming up, the thieves finally slowed down, and they finally looked back at Hoja, who catches up. They said, what are you doing? And Hoja smiles and says, look, you took everything I have. I figured I should come live with you. There's this unseen wisdom at first that the more you think about the story, the more it sneaks up on you, and you start to see things different. So once Hoja was out in the field and he was working with one of his friends in the field there, tilling it and whatnot, and they were just outside the village, and a traveler came up the road, stopped beside them, and asked Hoja, said, listen, I'm heading to this next village, thinking about settling in there, but I'm wondering, what are the people like there? And Hoja smiled and he said, well, tell me, what were the people like in the village you just left? And the man said, well, they were pretty nice. They were friendly enough. They were cordial. They tried to get along with each other. And Hoja smiled and said, well, my friend, you're going to find these people in this town and this village are just the same. So the guy thanked him and he rode off toward the town. Now, a little bit later that afternoon, another traveler came down the road, stopped and asked Hoja the same question. Hey, look, I'm thinking about moving into this village, maybe settling down, but can you tell me what the people are like there? And Hoja once again asked him the same question as before. He said, well, tell me, what were the people like in the village you just left? And the traveler scowled and said, oh, well, no, those people were mean. They were mean-spirited, vindictive, opinionated. They argued all the time. And Hoja sighed at him and said, well, I'm sorry, but the people in this next village are just like that. And so the fella turned around sadly and made his way back from where he came. After a little bit, the friend stopped Hoja and said, Hoja, you gave those two fellas two different answers. Which one is the truth? And Hoja smiled and said, exactly. That's really the story that we have today, I think, is this invitation in a time of epiphany to think about where we encounter the holy. How do we learn to see that in all of our moments, in all of our encounters? That's what Jesus is inviting Nathaniel, when Nathaniel says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Jesus is inviting him to see something different than the way he's always seen it. The way a man from Israel would always see the Messiah, as the one who's come to overrule the empire, the oppressive empire, in this case the Romans, and establish God's rule once and for all. But Jesus says, no. You think you see that, but you're going to see something more amazing. And we might think that he's talking about the miracles. You know, Jesus feeds 5,000. Jesus turns water into wine, a story unique to John. Jesus heals the sick and raises the dead, raises Lazarus from the dead. But think about it. In every case of those miracles, think about the outcome. Because once those 5,000 are fed, they go home, and they probably went back home to their food insecurity and impoverishment. Once those people were healed in time, they, like Lazarus, who was also raised from the dead, they had to face their own mortality and eventually died. And the water turned into wine, when all that was gone and Jesus was gone, all of those folks were left confronting the vintner going, where can we find wine this good? That's not what Jesus is talking about. I don't think. I think what Jesus is talking about when he says amazing things is he says, Nathaniel, you're going to see things you don't understand. It's going to just blow your mind. Because Jesus is going to eat with the wrong people. Jesus is going to hang out with the wrong people. Jesus is going to speak to the wrong people, the enemies, the Samaritans, the sick, the lame, the unclean, the rulers, the tax collectors. Jesus begins to collect and connect with all of these uncertain people in ways that Nathaniel may not have wasted a moment of time on. And he says, Nathaniel, once you see this, you'll realize it's all about this whole path, this whole uncertain tour has all been about changing you. Because once you begin to see your own God nature, your own compassionate inner self, the reality of love that is in you, then you won't be able to see everyone else differently. You won't be unable to see that in everyone else is this same possibility for compassion and for love. You'll see the holy in everything. When I was a boy, each week, Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest as he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread. Everybody would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. And I remember Sunday school, and we would read about the time Moses split the sea in two. Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad that miracles don't happen still. And now you know I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but But an even greater magic trick is anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, you could barely wet your fingertips. Now you know I have to catch my breath. It's like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, having second-rate hand-me-downs. Now I walk with the reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything, everything, everything is holy now. Read a questioning child's face, say it's not a sacrament. That'd be very hard to say. Read another new morning sun and say it's not a testament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I heard a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember church let out. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, having second-rate hand-me-down. But now I walk with the reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. So the title for this series, The Uncertain Tour, really came from an experience I had while traveling around as a performer and musician, storyteller for about 20 years. It happened a while back. And I wrote about it in a blog post on the website, on the church page. If you haven't read it, or you can go back and check it out. If you have, I'll tell the short version. But I was at a library conference during this time in my life, and it was a big one down in Austin, thousands of people in this exhibit hall. And this woman comes out of the crowd like just a bright flash of light, and wearing a bright yellow dress, wide brim hat, and coming straight towards me like she had a bead on me, and she was coming right at me. It kind of took me by surprise, but she had a big smile on her face, and I realized she was a librarian because the satchel she was carrying, this big canvas bag, was filled with books and stuff. But on one side of it, it said, "I think it's fair that I warn you, I'm a librarian," in big bold print. And then on the other side, it had this, she showed me, it had this stack of books, and it said, "I like big books and I can't deny it." So, well, if you know the rap song. Anyway, I knew she was a librarian. I knew she was wanting to know information about me, but she didn't ask. She just pointed right at me and she said, "I want to hire you." I thought, well, that's strange. I guess she saw the musical instruments, so she saw the interesting things I had. She said, "I want to hire you, but before I hire you, I have to ask if you're willing to go in the middle of if you're willing to come to the middle of nowhere." So I said, "I don't know. It's a strange question." I said, I've never been to the middle of nowhere. Where is the middle of nowhere?" And she smiled and she said, "It's just 1 mile east of Uncertain." Well, that began a tour that I set up for the next year called the Uncertain Texas Tour. I'd never been to Uncertain, Texas, but the library was in a little town called Karnak, just a mile east of Uncertain. Uncertain's up in the northeast corner of Texas. Many of you probably know that. Just right there next to Caddo Lake, which is our only natural lake in Texas, I believe. Beautiful area. Very mystical in a lot of ways. A lot of folks have a very spiritual sense when they go to Caddo Lake and hang out for a while. It's the town itself is almost nothing there, but there's a convenience store that also serves as a tackle shop. And I was in there visiting on this first time out there, and I was visiting with the manager of the store behind the counter. He asked me, he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from Fort Worth." He said, "Really? And you're all the way out here?" And I said, "Yeah, I didn't even know that this place existed." And he said, "Well, the truth is, you kind of have to be lost before you can find it." I got the joke, but I also realized there's something to that, right? And so after my experiences there, I decided I need to create a tour going to small towns where I normally wouldn't go because of my own anxieties about being in the small towns, because I'd feel like I wouldn't really be connected. I wouldn't really be able to connect well to small towns out in the country, different belief systems, different political orientations maybe, just a whole lot of different experiences. And yet, also this idea of uncertainty invited me to maybe see something I didn't think possible. And so I called it the Uncertain Texas Tour, and I set it up with all these little bitty towns. And I'll share one quick story with you from Uvalde, which many of you know down in Southwest Texas, but it was a little bitty sort of neighborhood community outside of Uvalde, and I was there at a school doing an evening family concert, and everything was going pretty well. But at the end, I had one of those experiences where I'd been watching this one woman. She was probably in her 40s, and she was kind of scowling during the whole thing. And I thought, you know how you make presumptions about what people are thinking about when you're talking, or what they're doing while you're performing, or whatever. Or they're looking at you from across the room, and so I'd already made all these judgments, but turned out they were kind of true, because when she came up to the stage afterwards, as the place cleared out, she looked at me and she says, "You know, I'm pretty upset with you." And I said, I'm sorry, what did I do? And she said, she just kind of laid into me and started critiquing the way I was telling stories, in particular, the kind of stories I was telling. Why was I after getting kids' humor? Why was I just trying to get their laughter? Did I just feel like I needed the attention, she was saying. Why wouldn't I tell more historical tales about Texas? Stories that would root them in their culture and their history, or stories that would tell them the truth of how they should act and behave. And then she said, because, you know, they need to be told how to live, not how to have their imaginations stimulated. And I would have argued with that, because I do believe the imagination is one of our most profound and powerful tools for problem solving, and for just living in our lives, right? For even experiencing the depth of God in our lives. And so instead, though, I reminded myself why I was on this tour in the first place. So rather than coming at her more directly and defensively, I did something that my friend Elizabeth Ellis would often remind me, and that is, sometimes when we're silent long enough, we'll hear a connection we didn't expect. And so I invited her to engage a little bit further. And I asked her, I said, tell me about the kind of stories then you've used in working with your kids, or that you're working with when you volunteered at the library. What kind of stories would you tell? And that began to open. I mean, at first it was awkward. At first there was no real connection. She told different kinds of stories, but eventually it began to open up with how we relate to our own children. And that opened up a story about her own experience with her daughter who had run away, and she was now in the midst of dealing with that very evening, in the middle of that, and she was dealing with her daughter's drug addiction problem. And I began to share our experience with our oldest son, and how we finally came around to finding a way to be helpful for him to find his way out of his own addiction. And after speaking back and forth, we probably talked for about an hour. And we got to that place where we were both crying at times. We were both being so vulnerable and open. After which she smiled and thanked me and hugged me. And she said, that certainly wasn't what I was expecting when I came up here. I smiled and said, that wasn't what I was expecting either. She said, this must be like one of those God moments. And I remember smiling. This was the first time I'd ever said this, and I've used it often after that, this phrase. And I said, I wonder if all moments are not God moments in waiting. That's to me what I think Jesus is doing with this invitation to Nathanael. He's trying to get Nathanael to see there's a different story than the one he's thinking about. Nothing good comes out of Nazareth. But Jesus is saying, you need to follow me. There's something you need to see. And it's not the miraculous. That's not what Jesus is talking about. He's saying there's another story to be told here. I think we're in a time when we need another story. I think we're in a time when we're living by two primary stories. We have been, especially in this time of pandemic. I mean, the myth that typically guides us is this myth of individualism. Our spirituality is individual. It's all about our faith, all about Jesus saving me. It's all about how I have this personal relationship between God and me. It's about my individual abilities and what I can accomplish, and you ought to be able to do the same with your life. So we have this meritocracy sort of everything's on our merit, based on merit or based on our individualism. Or the other side of the narrative that we live by in this country right now and in our world is sort of this global annihilation, this threat of everything's going to get wiped out. The threat that we're going to self-destruct. I mean, we're living with these tensions right now, and we see some of that tension being played out this past week. But I think that we need to realize there's possibilities for a different kind of narrative altogether. The kind of narrative that Martin Luther King spoke about when he wrote 27 years ago from the Birmingham jail, and he said, we need to all somehow come to see that we are all of us, part of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. We're all interconnected. We cannot sit idly by in our part of the world and not be concerned about what happens in some other part of the world. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, whether it's on the other side of the world or whether it's in our own backyard. And he said, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied together in a single garment of destiny. A familiar part of the speech that we all know, and yet how much do we really align our story with that idea that we are interrelated inextricably, that we are interconnected, interdependent? That narrative speaks to something out beyond ideas. As the old Rumi poem goes, out beyond the ideas of right and wrong, there's a field. That's where I'll meet you. This idea that we are intertwined in this web of destiny is a bigger narrative. That's the narrative I think Jesus was speaking to when he spoke to Nathanael. He's like saying, Nathanael, we've been down this road before. Nothing comes out of Nazareth. Nothing good comes out of Nazareth. That's the old way that Israel would think, is that it's all about the king, the new king of God, coming and overthrowing the Roman Empire and reestablishing God's kingdom, kind of almost like a theocracy. That's the old way of thinking, he said. There's a bigger picture, a more inclusive picture. He says, if you come and follow me, you're going to see something bigger than that. If you start to begin to recognize that you too are part of this incarnate God in the world, that you are incarnate with God, with the holy, with the sacred, he says, then you're going to come to understand and see everyone else in that way and see the difference that you can make. This is what happened to me with my uncertain tour right around Texas. This is what I discovered, something new and unexpected. I had previously assumed and judged otherwise, and yet I found connection in the least likely places. And it seems to me that's often the best we can do to be the change we want to see in the world. To find connections in the least likely places. I wonder if the amazing thing then that Jesus was promising Nathanael that he would see in the coming days and months and years wasn't all the magic stuff like I said before. The real miracles were the miracles of redemption and forgiveness, compassion, mercy, inclusiveness. To know oneself truly is to recognize the uncertain tour is littered with uncertain people looking for God moments. So just this final thought then. What is it? How do we make this path in this uncertain tour? How do we walk this path? There's a great song it's by Patty Griffin called Love Throws a Line. And these lyrics go like this. Let's write a story of a tidal wave. We run out of luck. We run out of days. We run out of gas 100 miles away from a station. There's a war and a plague, smoke and disaster, lions in the Colosseum, screams of laughter, motherless children, a witness and a Bible, nothing but rain and no chance of survival, right? This bleak, bleak narrative. And then she says, just before the flood comes, just before the night falls, just before the blood runs into the valley, just before my eyes go, just before we can't go no further, love throws a line to you and me. I wonder if we see that, if we could learn to see that in a different way. If we begin to see this interconnectedness that we are all a part of, this sacred ground that we all live in the midst of, and that we ourselves are imbued with. I wonder if we can begin to see that the line that's being thrown isn't to you and me. We're the lines being thrown. Love, it's as if Jesus is saying to Nathanael, you're going to start to realize you're the line that love is throwing into the chaos. You have to change the narrative. If you want to experience comfort, then you have to be comfort. If you want to experience harmony, then be harmonious. If you want to experience love, then be loving in difficult places. If you want to experience delight, be delight. So, here's the question then. Just exactly what are the people like in the next town?
Let's write a story, a tidal wave. We run out of luck, we run out of days, we run out of gas, 100 miles away from a station. Yeah, there's a war and a plague, smoke and disaster, lions in the Colosseum, screams of laughter, motherless children, a witness and a Bible, nothing but rain ahead, no chance for our survival.
Just before the flood comes, just before the night falls, just before the blood runs,
Into the valley,
just before my eyes go,
just before we can go no further. Yeah, I said love, draw the line to you and me. I heard someone calling me from very far away. Sister, oh sister, did you hear them say? Prisoners of this endless story of pain. You hold